Hi everyone, how's it going? Welcome to Student Talks episode 3. This edition is a special edition because it's the first edition that features a student outside of management engineering at the University of Waterloo. Today I'd like to introduce my good friend Claudio. Claudio is a fourth year engineering student. Fourth year computer scientist, computer science major at the University of Waterloo, and him and I met actually in first year in one of the residences on campus called Rev. We're both working on initiatives to try and make the university experience a little bit better in the university residence there. So there's a lot of memories from back then. A lot's changed between now and then. So I'm excited to have you on the show today to talk a bit about that journey, Claudio.
For sure. Thanks a lot, Brendan. And I'm very excited to be here as well. Just for reference, I don't know if my or our engineering friends would be happy that you call me an engineer, because technically I'm not. I'm in computer science, but I guess we can let that slip.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's good to see you here, as I said. So why don't we jump right into it? How about you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and where you grew up?
Of course.
You know, what you did as a kid, your interests, things like that.
Totally, yeah. So my background is a bit unconventional, some would say. I grew up in 5 different countries. So my dad was a diplomat, and so I was born in Italy, in Padua, near Venice. But right after I was born, like after 2 weeks, my parents had to fly back into Peru, which is where my dad was working. And so I spent 2 years there. I learned a bit of Spanish, but then I mostly forget it. Then we go to Jordan for 4 years, which was a very exciting time. I start to remember a few more things from there. And then we go back to Rome for 2 years, where I kind of started my elementary school journey. And then we moved to Morocco, specifically Casablanca, and that's where I finished my elementary school, then moved into middle school, and then finally Canada. So I was in Ottawa for 4 years, from grade 7 to 10. And then my dad's term expired, so we went back to Rome, and I did my grade 11 in Rome. But the thing is that I wasn't really kind of feeling myself being part of the community in Rome, and like with my school friends and the school environment. And so I decided to come back to Ottawa and finish my high school there. And so in grade 12, I kind of leave my family and go live with a friend's family. And I finished grade 12 there. And then since then, I've been in Canada, and then I applied to Waterloo, and I got in. And so I'm here now, still close to the university, but almost done.
That's crazy. And did you find it was difficult growing up, moving so much of the time, and obviously a lot of change? Was that challenging at times?
Definitely. Like I remember that it's funny. So the very first night that I spent in my new home in Ottawa, I was like, so we were all still like in the basement, just like on some mats because we didn't get beds yet. And so I remember falling asleep and thinking, God, if you exist, please just let these 4 years fly by. I don't want to live in this anymore. I'm tired of it. Just let it go. And now thinking back, I'm like, crap. Like that time really flew by. And during it was very hard to get adjusted, but I find that looking back at it, it's really been a great opportunity for me to grow and learn in so many different ways, and just like to make the most of all the changes and the new cultures and traditions that I was exposed to.
Right, yeah, because obviously there's a lot of different cultural differences between all those places. Do you find that moving, obviously at the University of Waterloo, most of us are in a co-op program, so we're taking on jobs in a lot of different areas, moving around quite frequently every 4 months. For a lot of people, that's difficult to adapt to. Did you find, or do you think that the moving you did prior helped set you up for success in doing that and made it a little bit more comfortable, or did you find the frequent moving still difficult?
Yeah, so I mean, more than difficult, I definitely found it kind of annoying or frustrating, because the main thing with me is that I don't feel like I have a home. I'm pretty much a nomad, like every 4 months, as you said, and as I'm sure that you've also kind of experienced, I've been around like a different place, a different house, different apartment. So it's frustrating more than anything, and like I kind of miss having a place to call home. But for the adjustment period, I can definitely say that having lived in so many different countries definitely helped me getting adjusted faster, and also just being more used to different environments. So, for example, one term I lived with a Chinese family, another term I lived with an Indian family. And so some of my friends, which are more used to being in always one home, they were like, Claudio, like, that's crazy. How are you able to just live with so many different cultures and just be okay with that? And I just tell them it's just about, I guess, having an open mind and really being open to learning about different ways of living, but also just being open about, different ways of thinking. And so, yeah, the traveling when I was young definitely helped with this.
Yeah, for sure. I remember on one of my co-op experiences as well, I lived with a Sri Lankan family, and to
Wow.
me, it seemed like one of the best options at the time, and I thought of it as a great learning opportunity as well. Do you remember in both those homes you lived in, was it a choice that you made to go there? Could you have lived somewhere on your own, and kind of why did you make that decision?
Yeah, so it was for a combination of factors. So for my so I've done 6 co-ops so far. In the I guess so in the first one I was in Toronto by myself. In the second one I was with the Chinese family. The third one I was by myself again. The fourth one I was with some roommates in California. The fifth one I was with an Indian family, and then the sixth one was just remote. So yeah, thinking back to those two where I was with the family was mainly convenience. So one is that they were both close to work, and so I really wanted a place that was close to work. Especially since they were both in the winter. I didn't have my bike to be able to, just go around and like travel a bit further. And so that was the main thing. And secondly, I was also interested in getting to, live with another family that could teach me some things about their lifestyle. And in the second case specifically, they would also cook for me, which is, I mean, I love to cook myself, but it's just convenient to come back from work and like having something ready. It's nice, it's very welcoming.
Yeah, I totally agree. It kind of adds to the family experience that you
Exactly.
obviously didn't get as much of with all that moving around. So do you remember when you actually graduated high school and I guess a little bit before that when you were making a decision on where you wanted to go to school and what you wanted to study? Do you remember what you were thinking back then and kind of
Yeah.
why you made the decisions you did?
For sure. So I kind of started to think about university in grade 11, which I guess is when most students, at least here in Ontario, think about it. And the main things that I was thinking of were that, okay, I'm pretty good at math. I like math. And I also love technology. And so I was looking into like math and engineering. I didn't really know of computer science until one of my good friends, Owen, told me about it. And so since then, I started to look more in the field, just started to see what it was about and get some more information. And it seemed really cool and really interesting. And so my options in grade 11 were okay, either computer science or like software or computer engineering. But then when I moved back to Ottawa for grade 12, I was planning on taking all the maths, sciences as well, just to keep my doors open. But then I realized that in grade 11 in Rome, I wasn't able, like I lost almost a year in my sciences, but not in my math. And so I was able to catch up on the math on my own, but not on the sciences. And so in grade 12, I had to like drop my sciences and just focus more on math. And so given that with math, I could only apply to like either other math majors or like go into something else. And so the engineering options were kind of closed for me at that point if I wanted to go to a good university. And so, yeah, that was a good yes.
So you mentioned that, like, so is the schooling system in Rome a bit slower then? Why were you behind on some of those
Yeah,
courses
so
that you wanted?
it's slower in a sense, but it's also because it takes 5 years in high school. So in Italy, we have 5 years of elementary school, not six, then three of middle school, not two, then five of
Okay,
high school, but then three of university. So in the end, it kind of adds up to the same, but it just split differently. And so some of
interesting.
the things that I learned in the grade 11 in Rome, we only did in grade 12 in Ontario, like in Ottawa. But other things that I did in grade 11, I also had already done in grade 9 or 10. So it just shifted a bit differently because of that.
Okay, interesting. And prior to coming to do computer science at the University of Waterloo, had you had any experience with software development, coding, or programming or
Yeah,
anything like that?
very little bit. So since I kind of started to look into computer science in grade 11, I thought, hey, like before I actually go and study this for 5 years, let me go and try it out just to see how it is. And so I started to take like a few online courses. I think there was one on Udacity, and then like there's just some Code Academy just to learn a few languages, like learn the structure and the way of thinking. And so I did that on my own in grade 11. And then in grade 12, our high school offered a computer science class, a programming class. And so I took that, and that was a lot of fun too. But that was pretty much the extent of it. And I have to say, like coming into first year, I definitely felt like even though the university puts it so that the first courses are like kind of at the very basic for everyone, so that if someone hasn't done it, they can still get into it and like learn right away. I still felt behind. Like most of my peers and friends, they still had done much more computer science. Like my roommate now, he did already like an internship in grade 12 and like knew all these things. And I was like, crap. I'm, I'm like a nobody, like I know nothing. And so it was definitely a challenging experience starting off.
Yeah, yeah, and so like as you mentioned, it's challenging when you feel like you're stepping in somewhere where you know very little. Do you remember how you coped and how you got yourself to feel more comfortable,
Mhm.
or if that ever happened, or what did the whole experience, a lot of that time in first year and maybe even now, did you kind of feel like an
Yeah, that's
outcast?
definitely a great question. So, in first year, I can tell you, and I know that to some degree we kind of feel these same things, but like I really felt like a small fish in a big pond. And coming from high school where I was a big fish in a small pond, like I was getting some really good grades, top of my class, and like I knew everyone. I was like
Mm,
I then went into university where I didn't know anyone, and I was the bottom of my class, or almost there rather. And so it was like definitely a big challenge to get adjusted to that. And for all of first year, it was just a real struggle, a real grind, just trying to stay afloat and like trying to figure out what I want to do because I'm like, hey, I thought that I loved CS, that I was good at this, but I'm coming here, I'm getting 60s, barely getting any 70s. Like,
yeah,
should I
yeah.
even stay in this, right? And so there was a lot of questioning. I was thinking, oh, maybe I should go into like economics or into design or something like that. Um, and so as to when I got better, I feel that as I was able to get like a co-op under my belt, as I was able to get some more courses in second year, like just as I got to understand more, I got more confidence in my abilities as well. And so that definitely helped. And further on the line, I also kind of switched to a co-op path, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, for sure. So, do you remember, was there anything in particular that changed in terms of like whether it be study habits, doing more projects or anything, or was it just natural with time that you're putting in the work, you just kind of got better, felt more confident, and then your grades started to improve,
Mhm.
or was there a change in what you were doing that was
Yeah,
significant?
well, I mean, full disclosure, my grades never really improved. Like I'm still at like 70s
Okay.
or so for computer science and math. Maybe a bit higher actually in the last year because yes, I've been starting to get things better. But like I'm still not comparable to like the top ones in our
For
like
sure.
in my class. But what helped, yeah, was just getting more co-op experience, getting more maturity overall. I feel that after doing 1 or 2 years of university, it really kind of builds you up some skills that are useful in your everyday life, and that gives you confidence. And then with confidence, you're able to achieve your goals in an easier way.
I couldn't agree more. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, if you were to look at a description of kind of your experience in first year and what you were doing to succeed, and a description of your experience now and what you're doing to succeed, both inside of school and work, you're balancing both at the same time right now. Is there any key differences
I
between the
think that
two?
one of the main things again is just about the confidence. I find that in first year I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. Like I had a ton of it in grade 12. I come into first year, I lose a bunch of it, and so with that lack of confidence, I was always questioning myself, always doubting what I was doing. I didn't know, like what to do at any moment, and that was definitely a big waste of time. Also because it was draining mentally. Whereas now I may be doing similar things, but I do them with more confidence and like I'm more sure of what I want to do and where I want to get to. And so that helps a lot with like just mental clarity as well because now I know that I have a goal that I want to try to get to. And so everything consciously and subconsciously is kind of having me work towards that. So that's one big thing. A second thing that I can think of is just stressing less and like finding more of a balance. In first year, I was super stressed over grades. I was like, crap, I need to do well. I can't fail. And like I was always thinking of the failure. And that was kind of what was driving me. But I feel like that's the wrong way of thinking about things. Like failure shouldn't be the
Totally agree.
motive that's driving you. What should be driving you is the desire to learn and to improve. And that's what I'm more following now. And it's also been one of the main things that's been helping me this term.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was in the exact same boat. I remember thinking back to first year.
Mm-hmm.
I came in just like you, very high marks,
Yeah.
90s, and I was continually getting 50s, 60s, at
Yeah.
most 70s, and I remember coming out of one exam in particular, and I just thought I bombed it.
Yeah.
We did kind of a team work session. There's a two-part exam. There's one part where you filled out a Scantron completely yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and so I filled this thing out, and it was a 5-question exam. There was a second part where you got to work with a team of 5, and with this team of 5, the 4 other members of my team had the same answers for A, B, C, and D. And then we get to
Mm-hmm.
E, and literally every single one of us had a different answer. One guy had A, one girl had B, one guy had C, and another guy had D, and I of course had E. And turns out that that was the only question that I actually got right, and it was by luck. But I remember coming
Nice.
out of that and getting a 51, and that was the most exciting moment of my life in first year.
I feel
Not
that.
quite,
I
but
feel that.
it's just
Yeah.
the passing and overcoming the adversity when you really don't think you have it in you. So if you could go
Mm-hmm.
back
Yeah.
and back 5 years and change your decision on either school or degree, would you, and why?
I don't think I would because my initial intention is pretty aligned with what I still want to do now, which is to really dive deeper into the world of technology and innovation. That's why I got into computer science. I loved the thought of being able to understand how technology works from the ground up to then be able to do something with it. And so the only close one that will come to computer science would maybe be systems design engineering,
Okay,
which I know also kind of thinks about a very broad set of skills that can be applied to the technology world. And so that's something that I also find very interesting. But again, in that case, I didn't really have the prerequisites to get into engineering. So given that, I
right.
still think that CS would be what I want to do again.
Cool. That's good to know. It's always validating when you get to the end and you wouldn't change your decision. So you've
Yeah.
had 6 co-ops. That's a lot of co-ops, a lot of different opportunities to explore different things. And you kind of started off in dev stuff, and you did a variety of things. I'll let you kind of talk about those experiences. But you also more recently have transitioned to more PM, product management stuff. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that entire journey you've went through, and kind of why you've decided to go the direction you've
For
decided to go?
sure. Yeah. So my first co-op, starting back from number one, I was doing a QA, so pretty much testing. Always at a tech company, so like testing the website, like various items on the page, and that was fun. At the time, I wasn't too excited about it, but then as I continued with my co-ops, I realized how useful it was to really kind of because it was a first opportunity for me to put myself into users' shoes and to try to break the code. And so that was something that was very helpful in my successive co-ops because basically, as I was writing code, then I would always make sure to go back to my QA principles and think, hey, now that I wrote this, let me try to break it. And so for my following 3 co-ops, I was doing full stack, so pretty much working from the database back into the front end. And then I did some embedded systems, so working with a credit card payment device. So kind of working with the firmware and like some of the bank transaction APIs. And then for the second half of my third internship, I was doing some machine learning work. And then in my fourth one, always as a dev, I was doing Android. And so there I was just building various features within Android. And so it was precisely in that co-op where I started to work more with PMs just because the company was structured that way. It was small enough to have PMs that were very involved with the engineering work. And so I got to work with them, do some user interviews and like look at how to create these user stories. And I got really interested. And so together with that, I also got less than what I expected in my evaluation. So I was expecting an outstanding, but I got an excellent, which was still very good. But it kind of verified this subconscious feeling that I had in my head that I'm not really meant to do coding. I like it, I enjoy it, it's fun, but it's not something that I want to do for my whole life. And so those kind of events that happened that term made me want to pursue something else. And so between then and my application process, the following term to apply for jobs in the foreign co-op, I started to read up about product management, see what it was about, look at some skills that were needed. And so then when the application time came, I was like, heck, I'm going to put half of my eggs in PM and then half in software dev. And so I was lucky enough to get one interview for PM, and I wasn't even given the offer. I was just ranked. And then I ranked them first and I got it. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And so I was stoked. I was super happy. And so that's kind of how my journey started. And then since then, which was winter 2020, I've been doing PM since. So I did that 5th term. Then I worked with the same company part-time. Then I got another PM internship last fall. And then I'm with them now part-time as well. So it's something that I definitely like a lot. And it's been a great experience so far.
Yeah, that's crazy how that all came about. What in particular were you doing to prepare yourself for PM? You said you read up about it a little bit, but did you do anything else outside of that, or no?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I could do really was to read and like to watch videos. I also read Cracking the PM interview, just to kind of get a bit more on the idea and way of thinking that would help me to do well in an interview. And I also did a few interviews before the actual process just to get kind of adjusted. I did a few mock interviews. I did some resume critiques just to get more into that mindset. But aside that, there wasn't really much else that you could do. What I'm also finding now applying to full-time jobs is that a lot of the jobs require PMs to have so much experience, but how can you really gain
Yeah.
PM experience, right? Whereas with the
Yeah,
dev,
for
you
sure.
can kind of get some projects on your own that can show your skill. As a PM, it's a bit harder to show that you can, handle a big team, that you can have a vision and run with it and go and build a product. So pretty much it was just reading and watching videos and just trying to learn the content.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the most interesting things about PM is there's still to date really no degree for product management.
Mhm.
And at the same time to get those skills, it's very difficult unless you're running your own kind of open source project. That's the best way I think you could really get that opportunity. You mentioned you took advantage of some resume critiques and mock interviews. Did you do those on campus at Waterloo or?
Yeah, yeah. So they were just with friends. One friend was a PM on Microsoft, and she was helping me with my resume and and like doing a mock interview. And then another one was with a friend, and then the third one I think it was like with the group that we have, or like with the club that we have at Waterloo, where they do this for students.
Nice. Okay, cool.
Mhm.
That's great. A lot of people don't take advantage of those resources, and I know myself, like I've never been the one to admit I could use a little bit of help and reach out for that help. So it's great to hear that you did that. Okay, thinking back over the entire journey of kind of the last 5 years, whether it be at university, first going there, over work terms, on co-op, or any
My
of that,
favorite
what's your favorite
memory,
memory?
so I guess that I can think of two, one pertaining to school and one to co-op. The one that I have in mind for school is, and I think that it's coming up more now where we're in COVID and whatnot, but it's just to go to MC or,
Hmm.
math building and go to the fourth floor and just sitting there with a cup of coffee and in the morning where I had no class and just studying and really enjoying being in the university, being on campus, and seeing people walk by with their thoughts and their worries and their classes to go to, and just seeing all that life, which is something that I didn't really cherish as much then. But now that I'm missing that, I'm really remembering of that as a moment that was really kind of core to my experience, just studying in a public place at the university, seeing other people, and just living the university life.
Yeah, totally. I actually, it's funny, like to speak to that memory. I also remember MC and in particular the balcony that you could go out on by the computer, math and computer coffee and donut shop there. And I remember it came up on my Snapchat memories the other day, a video of me sitting out on one of those lawn chairs, a beautiful sunny day, and I think it was April. Or it must have been March. It must have been March, which is insane. They must have just
Yeah.
opened this balcony for the summers. So, great memory. And what's the second
Yeah.
one
So
on the
the
work term?
second one from co-op was probably in my very first co-op, where I had just finished kind of like one of the big projects that we had, and like we were going to this like company party, and I just felt for the very first time part of a bigger team. Like at school, yes, like I had my groups and like we would do assignments and projects, sure. But here, like I was at an actual company, it was my first work term, and like we completed this big milestone, and then I was out with all my coworkers, which I never had before. And so it was just super exciting to feel this part of belonging and like the excitement of working together, getting something accomplished and done and finished. And I really felt like I was in tune with the company. And so that's a great memory that
That's
I
so cool. Yeah, it's always rewarding, whether it's at the end of a project or just celebrating someone's birthday,
have.
especially now with COVID.
Yeah.
Everything's digital, so it's hard to think back on those memories when we could get together and actually celebrate those things.
Totally.
What Thinking back over the same period of time, what's the most challenging experience you remember, and kind of how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I think that again, it kind of ties in with my studies mainly. It would probably have to be when I had to retake a course after 1A, so after my first term.
Hmm.
It was math 135, so it's like one of the intro courses like algebra,
Yeah.
which was pretty much all proofs based. And coming from just regular high school in Ottawa, I never done proofs, and so I was really shocked at what we were learning. I had no idea on how to go about things, and so I go into the exam, I fail it. I don't fail the course, but I still don't get a high enough grade to go to the next one. And so when I get the mark, I was like, oh crap, what I'm going to do now? I have to retake a course. I've never retaken a course in my whole life. What's going to happen? It was quite traumatic at the time. But then, I said, hey, look, life is made up of ups and downs, and shit happens sometimes. And so I said, I'm going to do it again, and I'll be better this time. I will try to learn, and I will focus on it. And so I go ahead, and, I take the course again. I still don't do great, but I pass. And
You
so I was like,
pass.
you know
That's what
what?
counts.
That's it. Um, and so, from that, I was definitely able to kind of learn how life doesn't always go the way that you want to, and that there will come things to your way that you don't expect, that you don't really want to deal with, but you have to deal with. And the only way to do it is just to do the best that you can and move on. And so that's what I did, and that's something that's helping me
100%.
even nowadays to deal with unexpected things. And it's been a very rewarding experience as a
Yeah.
silver lining.
For sure, yeah. So many
Mhm.
people end up taking the negative side of things and letting things like that get them down. And I mean, it's a natural response at the time, but it's great to see that you've framed it to be more positive in your memories. And now, although it's a challenging experience, I'm sure it's a very rewarding one to remember and overcome.
Yeah. I mean, if I may say, actually, I think that every experience can be either positive or negative, but it all really depends on you. Like there is a bright side and a dark side to everything, and I think that people can choose
100%.
to be able to take the good from something instead of letting the bad take the most of it. So that's something that I like to live by, because we only have one life, and if we don't make the most of what we have, then we're kind of missing out. And so I think that you can always find the good in any bad.
100%. There's no point in letting the bad stuff bring you down because it's just no one likes to be around a grumpy person, and it's just not fun to be
Yeah.
grumpy. There's so much more fun to have. So thinking now, like obviously incoming students going to university now, it's a completely different time from when you and I went into first year, given the pandemic. We don't know actually. Next fall might actually be a regular term, but regular I say in quotes because I'm sure there'll be some differences. What advice would you have for a student going into that, and if you were to go into that, what do you think you would do to kind of try to match the experience you had in first year?
For sure. Well, first of all, I don't think that it's possible to match it, just because, again, as you said, like it's so different, right? And so I think that if I were to go in with the expectation of having the same experience, then I don't think I would really be, that would be a fair assessment. But on the other hand, my brother, so I have three brothers. The second one, he's just starting university. Well, he
Okay.
started in September actually, so he's actually experiencing all this firsthand, and I was able to see it as a brother, and it's quite tough. It's quite challenging. As to your first question, what advice I would give? I think that the most important thing is to kind of find a place to focus, because since everything is online now, you're studying where you're playing games, where you're watching YouTube, where you're watching Netflix. So it's hard to really find a spot to dedicate to that. And I think that being able to separate, your study from your personal life is already a big step. That's one thing. And then secondly, also to find balance. Again, since we are all always on our work or study machines, it's hard to really find a line that separates your work from your personal life. And so I think like either setting a time or just finding slots in your day to be like, no, I'm not gonna study or work, and I'm gonna do something else. That it can be very important, because burnout is very real. And then if you don't dedicate the time now, you're gonna feel it much more later, both mentally, physically, physiologically. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of downsides afterwards. So that's what I would give as advice. And in terms of what I would do to make the most of it, I would just try to be as social as possible given the limitations. So join online clubs. If that's all that I can do, then at least it will be some exposure to different people and different things that are happening around me. And so that's what I would try to do.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. After all, that's how you and I met, and that's how we stayed
Yeah,
connected this entire time. So I think
exactly.
it's important for people to reach out and try and connect in the ways they can, even though it's less than ideal and feels kind of awkward at times. It's
Yeah,
the best we can do, really.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for being here today and for talking so openly about your experiences. I appreciate
Sure.
that, and I'm sure a lot of other people will too.
Thank you, Brandon.
Do you have anything final that you want to say, or do you want to wrap it up?
I would say if I had one last thing to say, I would kind of give the advice to not overstress about the small things in life. Again, there's so much more going on that we may perceive now in this moment of time. We have, a lot ahead of all of us, and thinking of the small bad things that may happen now is not a reason to like not enjoy what we have. And so just focus on the positives and always find the good in the bad.
I totally agree. Well, thank you so much. We'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Brennan. All the best.
Thank you.